The flow of Christian pilgrims, both Catholics and from other denominations, coming here to Turkey to see the little house in Ephesus where the mother of Jesus is believed to have spent her last days, is increasing. Thousands of people also go to Jerusalem to see her empty tomb. And throughout all these years, on many different dates, Catholics hold processions in various parts of the world to praise that young woman from Nazareth who gave birth to the boy Jesus. But when did Christians first hold processions just for the mother of Jesus? I mean, was it a Christian man or a Christian woman who started all of this? And after all, how did the woman who wasn't even mentioned by name in the earliest Christian manuscripts come to be venerated as the Mother of God? I'm here in Ephesus, a place where Christians feel very close to the Mother of Jesus. And I wanted to invite you to learn about a character closely related to Mary, but who has been practically forgotten in history. And if it weren't for her, maybe we wouldn't have Marian devotion as we know it today. By the end of this special, you will know how an empress who took a vow of virginity was fundamental for the mother of Jesus to gain the highest places in the Catholic faith. And to find out who this woman was, we're now going to Istanbul, the ancient Constantinople, where it all happened. I can't find this church. Of course, there won't be a sign. There's nothing here. It's a ruin, but I have the directions from the archaeologist who made the discovery. He mentions a mosque.
Oh, wait a second.
The mosque is back there, so according to the map, it has to be on this street here. It has to be here. Look here. There are some tombstones from an old Ottoman cemetery. It makes perfect sense with my map, which shows that there was a mosque here. Here's the mosque. And behind the mosque is where the church used to be. I'm probably already touching the walls of the church. But this one is still a bit more recent. These walls now, yes, these are older, much older. We're getting there. Look here. See, this upper part is new. Down here, take a look. These are the walls I'm looking for. These walls are from the Byzantine period. We're talking here about the end of the 4th century, beginning of the 5th century. Look here. It's falling apart. This little dust here takes me straight back to the time of our character, the time when Marian devotion began to take its current form. And then we start to understand that maybe our character was forgotten, precisely because the churches she built were destroyed. At the moment when the Ottomans took over this city, they started replacing all the churches with mosques, and many churches were abandoned.
Like this one here?
But this one is very important for us to tell our story. Now I can tell you that these are the walls that archaeologists have identified as belonging to the church that was built by the character we are trying to recover. The Empress, who even had the remains of Our Lady brought here from Jerusalem to be placed inside. The interesting thing is that the most powerful woman in the Roman Empire thought that Mary's bones were in the tomb, there in Jerusalem. And she wanted to bring the relics here to the new capital of the empire. This is the place, the exact place where there was once a church that they called at the time Theotokos of Chalcoprateia. Theotokos, the bearer of God, later understood as the Mother of God, from the Calcopratia neighborhood, which was a working-class neighborhood. Today, it's a very abandoned ruin, actually. It's been incorporated into a mosque because the city was Islamized. And the churches were converted into mosques. And here in the mosque, there are still many things from the church. These walls are from that time. And these columns were also identified as being from that time. They are typical columns from the Byzantine period that we see in other places. But there in Jerusalem, Patriarch Juvenal informed that Mary's remains were not in the tomb, because 3 days after her death, the tomb had been found empty. It was the first time that someone presented evidence of what Christians would understand as the Assumption of Mary. Thus, the Empress had to settle for the tunic and belt Mary would have worn on her death day. And that was all that was inside the tomb in Jerusalem. The two relics were brought here, and next to them was placed an icon of the Mother of Jesus, which a tradition from that time said had been painted by the evangelist Lucas. But after all, who was this Empress? Elia Pulcheria was born with a silver spoon in her mouth in the largest palace of one of the richest cities in the world. And from an early age, she was introduced to Christianity, which became an inseparable part of her life. She was the daughter of Emperor Arcadius and Empress Eudocia, one of the heiresses of the Byzantine Empire. Istanbul was still Constantinople, which had been made the capital of the empire just a few decades earlier when Rome succumbed to barbarian invasions. Empress Pulcheria was born during a troubled period in history. A little earlier, Emperor Constantine, her brother's predecessor, had moved the capital from Rome and brought it here to Byzantium, renamed as New Rome, and a little later Constantinople. And about a century before Pulcheria's birth, Constantine had also issued the Edict of Milan in the year 313, finally allowing religious worship in the Roman Empire and ending the persecution of Christians. We're talking about 100 years later, at a time when the empire is already Christian. The emperor is very Christian, and his sister, the Empress, is even more Christian. She is starting here with 3 churches that she built in Constantinople, including this one, beginning Marian devotion as we know it today. In this world that was becoming more and more Christian, while still a teenager, Pulcheria told her family that she would remain a virgin for the rest of her life, and that she would do this to fulfill a request made to her directly by God. When her parents died, Pulcheria received the title of Augusta and was declared regent of the Roman Empire until her brother, Theodosius the Pardi, was old enough to take the throne. It wasn't a very long period, but it was enough for her to become powerful for the rest of her life. Pulcheria built at least 3 churches, and all of them were dedicated to Theotokos, Mary understood as the bearer of God. Marian devotion already existed. It had been around since at least the 2nd century, because that's the date of the Proto-Evangelium of James manuscript, which, in a romanticized way, tells how her childhood would have been. The oldest image of Mary that has reached us was found in the Catacomb of Priscilla in Rome, and shows the mother with the child Jesus in her arms. But Pulcheria was largely responsible for Marian devotion as we know it today. It was Pulcheria, who was not from the church but was very active within it, who instituted the first weekly processions dedicated exclusively to Mary, with candles, images of Our Lady, songs of praise exactly as we know them today. But back then that didn't happen. It was something new. It was an innovation in Christianity. We just have to remember that the first time Mary was mentioned in a sacred text was in the Gospels, in the Gospel of Mark. In Paul's letters, she is not mentioned by name. And the Gospels only started to appear around the 70s, almost 40 years after the crucifixion of Jesus. The Marian cult developed over time, and it was Pulcheria who established the devotion the way we know it today. However, as we will see now, the life of Elia Pulcheria was quite turbulent. Pulcheria was involved in controversies throughout her entire life, practically, starting in her teenage years when she made a vow to remain a virgin forever. She ended up creating a problem for the future, because when her brother, Emperor Theodosius II, died, he left no heirs, and Pulcheria wanted to get married to secure the throne for herself or for her husband. So she married Marian, and of course after that, people started saying that Pulcheria was no longer a virgin. She's married, took a vow of chastity and isn't keeping it. She said no, explaining her husband respected the vow of chastity. And it was clear to everyone that that marriage had a political reason. It was to keep the power of Constantinople within the family. And Pulcheria continued, with that being Empress. And as Empress, she had a lot of power over the direction of the church. Pulcheria and Marciano had what was known as a mystical marriage, which at the same time that it paved the way for Marciano to become the new emperor, preserved the vow of chastity made by Pulcheria. Was it a marriage of convenience? A sublime love without any sexual relationship? Or did Pulcheria actually break her vow of chastity? The whole issue of Pulcheria's virginity was related to the virginity of Our Lady. Pulcheria wanted and didn't hide it from anyone to be seen as a mirror of Mary. The problem is that this whole issue of virginity and marriage ended up generating a serious accusation of falsehood within the church. Even before getting married, when the new archbishop was sent from Syria to Constantinople, Pulcheria clashed with the most powerful man in the church at the seat of the empire. The archbishop's name was Nestorius, and he didn't want Mary to be understood as Theotokos, the bearer of God, because he thought it was more correct for her to receive the title of Christotokos, the mother of Jesus Christ. Frustrated by Pulcheria's interference in church matters, Archbishop Nestorius barred the Empress from approaching the altar for communion, a place that was reserved for priests and the emperor. Nestorius said that was not a place for women. But the great confrontation between the two began to unfold after a mass here at the Hagia Sophia Cathedral Holy Wisdom, when the Archbishop of Constantinople, Nestorius, clearly said that Mary was not the bearer of God, that she was not the mother of God. Nestorius, amid harsh accusations, claimed Pulcheria was not a virgin and made an unverified allegation. It is said that Pulcheria was demanding to be treated as the bride of Christ, and that at times she confused her identity with that of Jesus' own mother. Was she mad, or was the Archbishop crazy? The debate was so intense that it culminated in the Council of Ephesus and ended with the defeat of Nestorius and the recognition of Mary as Theotokos, the bearer of God, later understood as the Mother of God. Victorious at the council, all-powerful in the empire and in the church. At that moment, Pulcheria decreed that every Wednesday the Christians of Constantinople would hold vigils, bringing candles, singing hymns of praise, and praying to Our Lady. And then everyone would go out in procession, carrying an image of Mary through the streets of Constantinople.
It is one of the earliest records we have of exclusive veneration dedicated to the Mother of Jesus.
Another Another important sacred place in the history of Pulcheria is the Hagia Sophia Cathedral, the Holy Wisdom, which today has been turned into the Mother Mosque. Before the magnificent building we see now, other churches existed on this same site.
Theodosius II, Pulcheria's brother, built the second around 415.
Already as a very important sacred place in Constantinople. After a life deeply dedicated to the empire and the church, after all the battles she faced to make Mary the Theotokos, the bearer of God, later affectionately called Mother of God. After all her struggle, Pulcheria died in the year 453. And now, you need to imagine with me what happened on these streets. Thousands of people on these streets wanting to pay tribute to the Empress. Later, Pulcheria was canonized by both the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church and became one of the most important virgin saints in Christian history.
I end our immersion in the story of Pulcheria by asking myself why, after all, this empress is not remembered today.
Why does no one talk about Hagia Pulcheria? Why aren't there any paintings of her? There are hardly any paintings showing the life of Hagia Pulcheria. Why aren't there any books? There are no mentions of her anywhere. She was practically erased from history, even though she was fundamental in the devotion to the Mother of Jesus.
And I'll say even more.
Without Pulcheria, it's likely that today most Christians wouldn't refer to Mary as the Mother of God.
Have you ever thought about that?
An empress who was fundamental in the story of Our Lady practically erased from history.
Well, I hope this special can serve as a tribute to Pulcheria so that many people can learn about the story of this woman who was fundamental in Christianity.